afternoon. This is your Pan-African show called Afreeqa with your host Katsalork Sefu. Today we have gotten the opportunity to talk to somebody that has arrived in Addis, and I'd like him to introduce himself. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you for having me.
Could you please tell us your name and who you are? A little bit background.
My name is Prince Kofi Asante Sefabwachi. I go by Asante, and I've founded an aquatic program in West Africa, Ghana, the first ever water polo program in the country of Ghana. I grew up in the US. My father's from Kumasi, my mother's from LA. So I've had both cultures instilled in me growing up. And up until about, as of 5 years ago, was when I was starting to get very called to come back to the continent to create something. And I'm back to do just that, work with the sports team and embrace Africa.
Beautiful. So Ethiopia welcomes you.
Thank you.
Before I get into, is this your first time coming to Ethiopia? I would like to know how you grew up.
Okay.
You know, being of two different cultures.
Right.
And I think you were also raised in a predominantly white neighborhood.
Correct.
So I'd like to know how you got to Ghana.
Right.
I want the before.
The before.
The before, because I think that's very important.
Yeah. I grew up in a city called San Diego, California. And simple as that, I have an older and a younger brother. Where we grew up, it was predominantly white. I think the only places I could really identify with other black people was within my own home. Mom, dad, and brothers, that was it. And there wasn't much to relate to outside of family, but the fact that those identities were so just a part of who we were. Mm. My dad is from Ghana, his mother would come over, his aunties would come over, uncles would come over, and it's full African. And then my uncles, my mom's brothers would come by, and my granddaddy would come in, and it's Black American. And it was just the understanding of those two parts of our culture. It made things real difficult, because when you're sitting in a classroom and people's names are Jake and Steven, and Ryan, Kyle, Alex, and then you have Asante Sefabwachi, it really makes you stand out. So it was a little difficult because you stick out. Yeah. You know, being dark in the area, the name. You know, it's almost like you don't have any preparation, except I know when my name is coming up on the attendance list, I have to prepare myself because they're going to say it wrong because it's not a traditional or a name that they used to sing. Exactly. You know, so it was real difficult, but I think it's made me very appreciative of my character, very appreciative of my cultures, but it was not easy. Just the identity part, you know, and not fitting in and feeling like you have to be someone different than who you are. Yeah, and then through that, I was playing different sports. Mom and dad put me into different things, baseball, football, soccer, and I didn't like any of them. Wow. I liked doing more creative stuff. I liked more entertainment stuff. And I was a chubby kid growing up, so I didn't want to get involved in exercise. And then somehow swimming was actually, there's a deeper story there, but swimming was something that we stuck to. And you're already in a white community. Now you're playing a sport where you don't see a whole lot of diversity, so it's like, narrowing down this magnifying glass on you. Yeah. So it was an interesting upbringing for sure. But there was obviously a reason why you went through that journey, because here you are now. Yeah, it's
you know what I mean? You needed to go through that to get to this stage.
It's very true. You know? And I think there's a lot of power in, you know, going through your journey, going through your growth. Absolutely. And learning how to deal with uncomfortable times. Because as uncomfortable as I was in almost every class, every team, every room, it's unmatched to the comfort that I felt when I first came to Ghana with my family, first came to Africa. It was just like the warmest hug, you know? Right. And we really weren't around too many black spaces in the States, you know, like the Black American culture. It was really just in our house. So any space of black people that was not the family was a big deal. So going to the airport in Ghana, going on the plane, everybody's black. The pilots are all black, and then you land and everybody is black on the billboards and the TV, you know, behind the counter, everybody. That was just...
It's a different feeling.
And that feeling would not be as warm if there weren't so many difficult times growing up as a kid and not feel like I fit in. So
true.
That's been my take on it, that, you know, I had to go through those feelings of like, man, why do I not fit in, man? I don't want to be, I want to change my name. Let me get straight hair. Let me do this and that. And then finally reaching that point of like, wait a second, this is real. This is who I am.
And I guess it took growing up and going through all of that to say, okay, I'm comfortable in my skin. I'm comfortable of who I am.
Yeah.
And who I have become.
Yeah.
And I guess when we're young, we don't know what we're going to become. So whatever we're going through, it's still hard.
Very difficult.
Right? So.
Yeah. Because kids, you know, first of all, we're kids, you know. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a duck, an astronaut. You know, we're kids. Yeah. And then especially when you're not in your own community, it's difficult to relate to a figure of what you want to be with, you know. I had my dad, I had other figures, and then it wasn't until I saw characters like Muhammad Ali just showing what it looks like to be so proud and comfortable in your own skin. That was when I said, wait a second, it's cool to look the way I do.
Okay, so now that we've met Asante, now we can get into our questions. Now you've briefly touched on probably all of the questions I'm going to be asking, so it would be specific on those.
Awesome.
So now we're going to come to your upbringing, being overweight and asthmatic as a child, influence your path. How did your upbringing, being overweight and asthmatic as a child, influence your path towards becoming a high-level water polo player, musician, and your desire to bring about positive change through the sport?
Lovely question, man. I think it just gave me a chance to associate with not being in a high performance group. Meaning I know what it's like to not be first to win the race. I know what it's like to have difficulty doing something. I know what it's like to be on the back end, to be, someone who's not winning. Because when I first started playing water polo, it was just, overweight. And we would do dry land activities running. And I'd always come in last. It's always the last one. They would even give me a head start to run before the team would, start running, and then they would catch me. And still, too, we were always associated with a lot of people that were performing at what they want to do, their craft, we were surrounded by professionals, not just in sport, but in my house. Dad's a doctor, grandfather's a doctor, uncle's an engineer, just a lot of excellence. So we know what that standard is. And when I got into swimming and, water polo specifically, I think I was more stubborn at not performing well compared to the other people than it was of, man, I really love this sport and I want to be serious because I have a passion for this game. It was like, no, I don't like losing. I don't like being so overweight and asthmatic. I'm going to get it together. And in that summertime, I just exercised a lot, swimming a lot, changing up your whole diet, studying people who have been successful in sports, like the Michael Jordans, like Black American people, and then just kind of copying their success. And then that was a formula that I took on myself to just be someone to go from always losing to now leading the races and being a leader and then being somebody other people can look up to. Just that feeling of like, I know what it's like to be panting and wheezing. And now we have to wait for Asante because he's taking his time and he's da-da-da. And then I was like just angry. Even though I was so exhausted, I still had energy to be angry at where I was. So that was a formula that I took with me to apply, same with school, same with music, same with performance, that I know what it's like to not, be at the top. So me being kind of a face for what that can look like and knowing how powerful that is, I wanted to create that same impact in other people, especially in Ghana, just giving everybody an opportunity. Even when I'm in the States, you don't want to really discredit the work people are putting into it. You always want to encourage, because that one person you encourage could be the one that will change the whole direction of something. So it was just the association of being an overweight, asthmatic kid in different sports and surrounded by so much excellence, and then striving for that, wanting to have that, and then wanting to inspire people to do the same thing.
I think I read somewhere that your older brother was also into water polo. Was there? I read a few things actually.
Okay.
And actually, I think the most important one would be asthma and swimming.
Correct.
I heard there's good things for asthmatic people if they swim.
A lot of health benefits.
Exactly. So if you could also touch on that, and then is it because of that you got into water polo, or is it because of your brother that you got into?
So it was really both. In the town we were in shout out to Coronado, there's a lot of excellence in this sport. It was a big sport in the town that we grew up in. And my family was friends with another family that were pretty well experienced in the game, some going to the Olympics. They became friends and started talking about how there's so many benefits for swimming for kids with asthma. just the sense that, one, it's helpful in regulating your breathing. You know, I just share that swimming, it affects every muscle in your body, including your lungs. So me being the younger brother and just following everything the older brother was doing is how I also joined water polo. So I think it was presented to my family as, hey, there's a lot of health benefits in swimming, especially with kids with asthma. This might help your kids. And then older brother following it, it's really like, I don't have a choice. So it really was a bit of both. It being introduced as a health benefit, and then also just, you know, hey, take your brother with you. Wherever you go, take your brother with you.
Take your brother with you.
Yeah.
So it helped.
It did help. Within the health benefits of swimming and aquatics, you have your, I said health benefits already, but it's also a humanitarian thing to learn. You're learning drowning prevention. You're learning water safety. You knowing how to float means you know how not to drown. So as long as you have those elements as well, it's a lot of benefits, man, to being in aquatics.
So how has your family's diverse background with your grandfather's involvement in medicine, politics, and philanthropy shaped your own ambition and values?
With that one, just by them existing, provided a mold for me to follow. Not knowing how big of a mold that was, like how significant their work was, just knowing that, okay, if I want to do anything in this life, I can follow what my family has done just because follow the leader, you know?
Right.
Animals are born, they follow the first thing they see. So just the fact that I was able to see someone doing it and they happened to be in the family, it already made it very familiar for me. You know, we grew up with this idea of, all right, you are going to be a doctor. Because your dad was, and his dad was, and his dad before him probably was, so congratulations, you're about to be a doctor.
Follow the leader.
Yeah.
So, could you share more about the impact your grandfather, the former chief of the Ashanti tribe, had on your life and aspirations?
So my dad, that's my paternal father, my paternal grandfather, my dad's dad. I never met him. He passed before we were born. I think he even passed when my dad was very young. But we always heard the stories. That's where our names, we get our name, the title Prince, because it's all paying respect to the works that he did in the community, in medicine, in politics, in philanthropy. And the story that was always shared was how much he was interested in helping his community. He would see children without families. He'd go to the funerals where a kid's dad would just die and say, hey, you're going to live with us now. He would just adopt kids while being a medical doctor and while working in different government buildings and being a visionary. And there's one story about, he was building a small little clinic that's still there, and they have our last name as the Memorial Hospital. But as he was building it, there was a balcony, maybe on the second floor. And no one had ever built a balcony in a building. It was the first ever of its kind. And those revolutionary ideas got people to speak and talk, and they actually started trying to destroy it, trying to bomb it, causing fires. Because who are you to have these revolutionary ideas and try something new that can benefit somebody? So he was really a pivotal person in the community and also in the family, I hear stories about the people that my dad grew up with in that same house, and they've all gone on to do amazing, incredible things, engineers, academics, same, medicine. And I think it's the same thing that I carry with me, the fact that we have somebody so close that can show you a path, And it's so significant that I think I even downplay it just because I have the same name. But we'll go to different areas in Ghana and we'll mention our last name. And people are like, hey, I grew up across the street from that hospital. I used to walk across it every single day. Was that your grandfather? Your grandfather was a great man. You know what he did? He did this, he did that, he did blah, 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 blah. Wow. So that was, I don't know, it's impacting when you are a black kid from a white community. You have so many limited options to see yourself in, but then you know that the one that you have without a doubt is such a huge figure to look up to. It's very comforting. And it adds to that whenever I go back, whenever the family goes back to Ghana, we visit the hospital just to, just to be there and honor it. And it's very cool, if I can be totally honest.
What motivated you to pursue both water polo and a career in hip-hop music? And how do these two passions intersect in your life?
Water polo and hip hop because it's sport and music. And those are two universal languages across the world. Yep. People can understand goal. People can understand people collectively bobbing the head, you know, put your hand, all that stuff. And I think music, secretly, just as an African American, as a black person, it's in our DNA. There's no escape from it. So that was something we grew up with, always hearing music, playing instruments. And in sports, that was just something that, I don't know, I think we are also very athletic people as well. And it's funny, as long as I kept those two passions, I was watering those two plants in my life, I was cool. I would go to water polo practice, do the homework, and then play music, write poetry, and put it to song. And then getting older and older and older and still realizing, wait a second, this sport and this music is still keeping me focused. There's something that I really need to explore here, and how can we bridge the two? And then just seeing how it's done with these big events, like the World Cup. You have the World Cup, everyone is screaming and supporting their country, and then before the championship you have a performance by a famous artist. And everybody's equally as, you know, engaged and entertained. And I said, wait a second, this is really something that we can do. Because there are two forms of expression. There are two hobbies that can really promote wellness, healthiness, you know, self-improvement. And for me, it was like water polo keeps me focused and it keeps me in shape. And then music is where I can kind of tap into that. You don't have to be so hard. You can kind of get into that vulnerable side. You can really express yourself, whether it's piano or writing lyrics or spitting a fresh rhyme.
So you've been doing that since a young age. So you've obviously gone through music lessons.
Yeah.
Music was a part of your growing up.
Yep. There's no escape. No escape. Piano lessons, drum lessons. I played bass guitar. High school band, I was on the drums, marching band. I played trumpet. That was my first instrument. You know.
Nice.
Always.
Beautiful. You know, especially since you said, what does your mom do?
So my mom was the super mom. She used to be a health inspector.
You see?
Yeah.
So they both worked hard.
100%.
Exactly. So at what point, you know, because sometimes...
100%.
So that's beautiful.
So then now we have my mom's father, my granddaddy, my maternal grandfather. He was a classically trained musician.
Ah, you see? So it's...
Piano, saxophone.
It was in you.
It was in. So even if I didn't want to be a musician, it would have found me eventually.
Exactly.
There's no escape.
Exactly. So can you share a specific instance or experience that really highlighted the lack of diversity and inclusion in water sports during your upbringing and early career?
Funny enough, the fact that the only person that looked like me was my brother in the pool. And if anybody else, it was probably my mom, my dad, and my younger brother.
Such a shame.
That was it. But then even seeing the greatness associated when you do see another black player, because some people might not know this, I think the first black Olympian for water polo is also a Jamaican. And again, on his team, he was the darkest one, along with another player who's an Egyptian American, you know? So realizing, wait a second, there are so few black people in the sport. There's so much, you know, there's a high lack of diversity. But the ones that do play it end up going to the Olympics. That has to say something. Exactly. You know? And it just, again, being able to see that path present. And then all through high school, I was the black guy on the team. Every team was a black, everybody recognized me as a black guy. College, maybe there's one or two other dark players that I got to play against or were on the same team as. And then it wasn't really until I got to play in Brazil for like 2 semi-seasons, 2 half seasons, 2 seasons. And then over there, seeing more dark people playing. So now you have this conclusion of, wait a second, I didn't start seeing myself in other players until I left the country. How crazy is that? Whereas basketball, football, soccer, baseball, tennis, you know, you see more.
Why do you think that's so?
It's a history of exclusion.
Right? Yeah.
Exclusion, segregation, civil rights, trauma. From the continents, you have the slave trade and water. And then in the US, you have white-only pools, bleaching the pools. The colored-only pool section are the most dirtiest ones. They don't, you know, take care of them. And then just an access to it, because to really equalize that conversation, that debate, it's a little difficult to really engage in pool culture because it's expensive. Yeah. And then also the water that might be accessible to you could be a lake or a river or a beach. And look at how dangerous of a situation that could be. So we have a lot of pillars around our inclusion for aquatics. But that's not to say they're all great reasons of why we should still stay away from the pool, you know? Like, granted, there's a lot of issues that are not our fault, but that doesn't mean we should still stay away from the water. No, we have to, take part and take over.
There's music involved in all this
Correct.
aquatic movements. So we play music in between, and there were two that I had picked out.
Oh boy.
One is African Man.
Yes.
So I would like to know, at what point did you decide to do African Man? Because I feel like it's got some history.
Oh man, I'm so happy you asked this question. That song is so very special. Backstory, my cousin he makes instrumental beats. Okay. He's a producer. And as he was growing up in his career, I would steal all of his beats and I'd write to them secretly. And then during the pandemic, which was also during the time I started doing the inner work, and they say, wait a second, like, I'm an African, wait a second, I'm an African American, let's look into Ghana. I know about the black, like, let's really, just the awakening, honestly, just the awakening happening. And then hearing the song and it being a hip hop instrumental with different elements, there's a Brazilian sample in there too. There's actually a really cool full circle moment happening. But having that worldly sample, and I said, okay, this speaks to me and my story, being a worldly person. And then, the hook just came into me. And it was, again, while I was studying my history, studying the African history, and speaking to my story, how can I share my story? And then it just came out, African man, I've been on white land, traveled the world, I've been on white sands. Because so many people, I promise you, can relate to being an African man in a white land. Being, a foreigner, being misplaced, being someone that just goes around. And that song just came to me because it was, I guess, the next phase of my artistry, the next phase of my career, the next phase of me, being an artist, of like, okay, I'm comfortable enough, I know my flow, I know what kind of messages I want, I know how to deliver it, and I know how to speak about myself. So let's just talk about us and this experience and make it catchy and make it fun. So that song it's an important one. It's got a cool video to it. Yep, First time I came after we released it, I was showing people, hey, check out this cool video we did. And that's been a positive one. I was in Zimbabwe and I showed it to a group, just off the phone. They were like, oh, African man in a white land. Travel the world in a white sands. That speaks to me.
It's catchy.
Yeah, that's me. I'm the African man. I love it. I put a lot of songs out and I've gotten better, than the early years. And that song, that project was definitely speaks to where I am right now as an
African man.
Thank you very much.
Are there specific messages or themes from your heritage that you aim to incorporate into your music or advocate through your platform in water polo?
Through music, I always wanted to put out a positive message, but a genuine one, so it wasn't coming off as corny, making a cool hip hop song about eating your vegetables.
No.
I wanted to make it like something that's real. And I knew that because I heard that there's so much other hip hop and music that's got such vivid descriptions of the struggle, which is all very true. And it has such dark expressions sometimes. And I said, all right, they've already taken care of that part. Let me see if I can create something to, again, uplift, empower, in a genuine way and in a real way, like in a style of hip hop, which is really how the whole genre was birthed.
Right.
Trying to get out positive messages. And I liked to put into my music the great stuff and the great messages that I would hear from the music that I would listen to. Like, man, these words really uplift me. How can I give that same effect in my promotion, my lyrics? Man, I loved how this guy told a story in his song. Let me try to write some stories in my music, And then same with the platform of pushing the sport, pushing aquatics, pushing this, Black Star Polo program. It's just that anything you want to do, whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's academics, anything in life, you have to stay consistent with it.
Right.
It's going to be difficult. It's not going to become easier, but you become better. You improve so much. It's not easy to really be a high level anything. Exactly. Sports, music, anything. But when you commit to that and your intention is you want to improve, you see the results in anything. So that's the message with the sports and the music, is that stick with it because it'll pay off in some way.
How did your first trip to Ghana impact your perspective on water polo and the potential for its development in the region?
This first trip to Ghana, it was so life-changing. It was a real rebirth. Because again, man, I grew up in a white community, right. A white Hispanic community, and you know, we just knew, like, hey, I'm from Ghana. Like, we just knew that was it, but we didn't know what that meant, you know? We knew we were black, but we didn't know what the heritage was. And then going to Ghana and actually seeing it while I was training for collegiate season, you know, like.
So how old were you? About
first 18? Time?
17?
17, 18. Yeah.
You were grown.
Yeah, I was grown. I was out of high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing. Dad, hey, once you graduate, that's your gift.
Beautiful.
You know, and it's different than a lot of people. You know, some people go when they're young just to get exposed to it early in their life. But I think they knew what they were doing. Like, no, let them grow up, let them utilize it, like get the experience and then go so you can have an appreciation for it. I think they did know. Big surprise that parents know what they're doing.
I know they do.
But going there and then while in college, while still being, you know, real young, how did it, like 18 or 19, man? Anyways, me being so immersed in the sport, me just accepting that I'm the darkest one on every team, and then this small light bulb going off of like, hey, wait a second. You know, people here are really strong. And there's a lot of people that live by these lakes and these oceans and these rivers. Maybe we could make an all-black team to be the first of its kind. And I'll get all the black people to say, wow, this is great. I'll get the Africans to say, yeah, we can swim.
Possible.
Duh, it's possible, you know? But I didn't know what to do with it then, so I just had the thought and I put it in my pocket and kept it there for years. But just seeing that was the introduction of we are gonna make something happen here with our people for this purpose. I don't know when, I don't know how, but
you knew.
We can really do something here.
So now Black Star Polo is the name of your group in Ghana, right? Or is it the name of a company?
It's the name of a foundation.
It's the name of a foundation.
So
okay.
Black Star Polo is the non-profit organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question would be then, what inspired you to pursue a career in becoming a coach and founder of Black Star Polo?
Being a coach was because it was after college where I was still playing, and that was just something I could do out of high school. Going back home, that was, you know, the first pretty committed job, just because it was a community I was already associated with. And then already making some donations of equipment to Ghana, working with the school, getting them involved, kind of introducing the sport to them. And then realizing, you know, I did the same thing, what I've done in the US with my old high school, I can do it in Ghana. And then coming back to do that in the US, and then to say, okay, wait a second, this can actually be something we can build our lives around. And creating a club team that I could coach, whether it's from afar or just instruct people how to coach. That was something that I think allowed me to tap into being a teacher too, because I would also do some substitute teaching and tutoring.
Okay.
So I think I had this affinity, this ability to, and a background in academics, that I liked teaching so much. And then I'm an athlete that teaches, so just be a coach. And then making this whole nonprofit for Black Star Polo, which is based in the US and supports the club team in Ghana, to be this whole platform that I can spread that message out, people can get inspired by, people can help and be a part of it. And, you know, I think it's just something, this whole story proves there's something to be said about stick to what you know and just do it well. I knew how to play the game, I knew how to teach, I know how to coach, so I love Africa, I love black people. I was like, yo, man, figure it out.
Here I am.
Just figure it out, man. We can only give you so many hints, so.
Yeah. So in what way did you engage and involve the local Ghanaian communities in the promotion and development of water polo?